Thanks very much for checking out the first ever episode of the Lookout Sir Experience, a mostly 40k and also Games Workshop podcast where we talk about the hobby and our broad experiences within it. Today is the 14th of June 2018 and you're listening right now to my good self, Dan, and I'm joined by my buddies Joe.
Good evening.
Jesus, Joe, there we go. You're right, you forget to breathe.
I'm sorry. I went on the out and then I forgot to go in.
There's none of that was the pressure. The pressure of when am I going to get introduced? When am I going to have to say something?
The mounting fear built up to the point where I just had that post-exam shock and forgot my name.
Oh, I'm naked! But there we go, that's Joe there. And also, Phil. How you doing, Phil?
Hello, I'm good. Coming to you live from the Hobby Sheds.
The Hobby Shed, located somewhere in the UK.
My dad used to have one of those, but he used to drink in it.
Yeah, maybe it might be less productive if that's what I was doing.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
But more fun, of course.
Well, absolutely, all fun, indeed. You know, that is the best possible use of a shed, is abusing alcohol. But, you know... Aren't you just huffing paint in there, Phil? Isn't that what you're doing?
Or bits of plastic or resin that
absolutely.
Down. I'm inhaling directly into my lungs.
Do you have a mask for when you're cutting up all that resin? By the way, I've always seen people on the interwebs talking about having to wear like a ridiculous mask when working with Forge World stuff. Are you one of those?
Not really. I've only recently got a mask, and it's one of those really cheap dust masks for painting. It's not a particulates mask, so I'm probably going to get cancer in like 5 to 6 years.
Fantastic.
And have like a lung full of blocks of resin, no doubt.
Amazing. Well, at least that puts a relative shelf life on this experience, on this experiment. Enjoy it for the next 5 years, guys, if we get that far.
We need to start up a Patreon so we can afford to get one for Phil.
Well, there we go. What, a funeral for him?
No, like a save up to get one of his like Division-esque gas mask / biohazard ones.
There you go. Buy Phil a new lung.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be cheaper than one of those masks.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I'd sooner risk the death than have to spend that
money. Can you still get iron lungs? Are they still a thing?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Well, suitably 40k-esque, so I hope so.
Amazing. Well, anyway, there you go. So that's us. So what we're going to talk about today? What are the topics of conversation? We have 3 topics for today. The first one is, who are we? Why are we doing this? And what do we hope to gain from doing this? Obviously, we want the fame, the notoriety, the trolls saying horrible things about us on the internet. These are all the sorts of things we want to invite into our life for some reason. So here we are trying to do that. So we'll talk about that in more detail momentarily.
We're also going to talk about the recently released Knight Codex, what it brings to the game, the households and the allegiances, and what the knights can actually do now. They've been made better, for lack of better words.
Have they been made better? I suppose that's something we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
We're also going to be talking about the 40k doubles tournament that's happening up at Warhammer World in just over a week's time. All 3 of us are going to be going with our good friend Richard. So we're going to be just talking through our army lists and what we reckon we'll come up against in our opponents' list as well.
There you go. Our maybe one day roaming reporter from America, Richard, will be joining us. It should be exciting. So with all that said and done, let's move on and actually start talking about the things we said we were going to. Hope you enjoy, guys. Thanks very much. Hey guys, so as discussed at the very start of this video, we're now going to talk about who we are, what we're doing, what we're hoping to achieve, broadly just our entire involvement with the hobby up to this point. And seeing as I'm the lucky bugger that's already talking, I guess I may as well start by talking about myself, because clearly that's something I love to do. Wouldn't we agree?
Yes.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely. So, I have been now playing Warhammer 40,000 since I was 13 years of age. I was attracted to it like all teens seem to be, or the majority of the audience that seems to get into it, at least back in the mid-90s, ultimately the appealing kind of values of a world torn by war constantly, with big crazy dudes with swords covered in chainswords and mad aliens and all that stuff was just like really, really incredible. And I mean, the thing was, like, where I grew up, we didn't have like a Games Workshop or anything. I got my very, very first box of models. Do you guys remember those old slot fit old Death Guard Nurgle Space Marine kits?
No. Yes, when it was like the arm, like the main body, and the arm with the knife pointing up.
That's the one.
That's
the
one
one.
piece.
I got one
and
of
then
those.
The bolt gun arm was clipped on the side.
That's the one. It was incredibly detailed. I got one of those box sets of 5 Death Guard Space Marines from the hobby shop near the bus station in Salisbury. It was crazy. Like, I mean, at the time I was talking to some American lad who had just transferred over to our school, gentleman by the name of Jack. Lovely lad. He still plays 40k, in fact, as well. I've seen him talking on the Elder forums about it. So if he listens to this for some reason, hi Jack. It's entirely your fault. But he was talking to me about it. He was talking about, there's an incredible hobby, and they have these stores, and you go in, and you meet people, and you have something in common instantly. And me being a little lunatic 13-year-old sort of chronic liar, I thought it was really clever at the time to come up with some sort of fictitious other hobby that I was into that offered similar kind of delights with no actual basis in reality, because I don't know, I was the kid that lied all the time at school, which is naturally, I know, right? Who would have thought? Who would have guessed? Which is naturally why I ended up playing Elder, because if you're sneaky Elder, absolutely. So,
and it's gained you the great nickname of 2 points.
2 points, absolutely. A nickname earned because once I argued with Joe and Phil that no one would notice if I went into a Warhammer World event with 2 points over. But in the end, after their wise counsel, I ended up being 2 points under. So it's still it was still valid. That power sword got removed, all was fine. But yeah, so just Elder, been playing Elder ever since, really. Still can't get used to calling him Eldari. Drakari weirdly works better for me than Dark Elder, strangely, but like Eldari still doesn't quite work. But I'll get there. It's like Astra Militarum. Every now and again you slip into Imperial Guard, but you seem to make it work for the majority of the time. But yeah, no, just playing Elder. I guess, if I was to describe myself as a hobbyist, I'm very much a gamer first, and all the painting models and assembling stuff, it's more a kind of chore, really. I mean, I do sort of enjoy it, but I never feel like I've got enough time to dedicate to it, certainly now. So the majority of my hobby experience is playing the game. So yeah, I mean, that's it in a broad sense. I mean, obviously there's more to it than that, but yeah, I mean, I've been playing pretty much consistently since I was 13 years of age. So that was 2nd edition that I started on. Favorite edition's 5th edition. I say it all the time. 5th edition's the best version of 40k. I just wish we'd go back to playing 5th all the time, but here we are in 8th edition, which is fine. I like it fine enough. I just hate the morale system, and I hate the combat system, but I put up with it. But you will hear me complain about it more often than not.
I mean, we hear it quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll hear it in this podcast at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're quite enjoying it because we've actually got better. Our games have got better within 8th, and Dan's had a bit of a decline. So
it's true.
It's the rise of the noobs now.
That's it, man. I was definitely a much more competent gamer in the framework that was 3rd edition to 7th edition, because it was always fundamentally the same game, with a few nuanced tweaks. And yeah, I was that guy who was always like, well, I think you're fine. No. Although actually, I don't know. I'd like to think I wasn't that guy, but I always knew the rules, and I always had a good grasp of how army lists went together. I wasn't super into allies either, I have to admit. Like, that's why I love 5th edition so much, because it was like self-contained. You bought a book, you got your army, you dealt with its weaknesses, you enjoyed its strengths. Yeah, sure, people were spamming Razorbacks with Grey Knights or Thunderhammer Storm Shield Terminators or whatever other nonsense was doing the rounds in 5th edition times, but you know, for the most part, if you had crappy troops but really good elites in a codex like, I don't know, Tyranids or Space Marines even, you know, it made the army list really interesting, very unique. And I always felt like, I remember going into the Games Workshop store that I was frequenting at the time, and the guy's like, "Oh, 6th edition, we've got allies," and I was like, "Oh Jesus, it's just gonna." In my opinion, it was going to ruin the system, and to a certain extent, I feel like I was right. But I've kind of, you know, I mean, as with everyone, I've moved on now, and I'm used to it, and I abuse it or utilize it as much as anybody. But yeah, no, 5th edition, man, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. But there we go. That's me in the broadest sense. Joe, how about you, man?
I got into the hobby. When like year 3. When did the starter box set of the Space Marines and Orcs with the cardboard scenery?
That was 2nd edition, yeah.
That was second. So I also joined the 2nd edition. But I got into it because at the time, me and my stepdad were looking for a shop to buy paint for me to paint a bunch of plasticine fruit I'd made for school, and inadvertently walked into a Games Workshop store in Luton, which he left me in for about 3 hours, with some stellar parenting. But I have continued to do the hobby since then.
I hate to say, Joe, and I didn't mean to interrupt you because obviously you didn't interrupt me, but if we choose to use the version of the intro where we talk about your dad drinking in the shed, he's going to sound like the worst parent ever.
Well, no, this is different. These are 2 separate dads.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Well, that makes things even more interesting. It's like dad parenting all over.
We're learning so much about you, Joe. We never talked about your strange parenting scenario before.
No, yeah. So I had 2. I'm on my 3rd stepdad.
Nice.
And I have a real dad. So
wow.
Yeah.
4 dads.
None of them enjoyed my hobby, apart from the fact that it meant that they could leave me at Luton Games Workshop for a Sunday afternoon.
It is a plus.
Yeah, it was good. I did all the hobby. And that's where I started playing Guard. And then I went on to Dark Angels because it reflected my moody, angsty teenage self. And then kind of just done random armies up until now, really, where...
You've pretty much done every army, or is it easier to list off the armies that you haven't done yet?
Okay, the only army that I haven't done is Orcs. I'm pretty sure. No, I haven't done Orcs. I've thought about it, but then I look at the idea of painting 90 Orc boys, and then that idea vanishes very quickly. At the moment, I'm doing Custodes, which I'm very much enjoying.
I've got to correct you. The internet has thoroughly decided that it is Custodes.
Custodes.
If you listen to any other YouTuber, that's how they say it. So, get it right now, Joe. They're your army. You've got to embrace the correct pronunciation.
Okay, I'm doing an army of custodians then. I also have a small Raven Guard army going on, but as a bit of a shoestring budget gamer, if I want a new army, I have to sell them, which means that Dan gets all my armies, really.
That is true. That is true. I deeply regret not having bought your Iron Warriors army, actually. You sold it to that dude over in... where is he now? Was he over in Nordics somewhere, wasn't he? Or is he just somewhere else in the UK?
The Iron Warrior, I actually sold it to an eBay seller.
Oh, okay.
All my Iron Warriors, but
I deeply regret not buying those. Those Mauler Fiends you painted were beautiful.
Yeah, I had a really nice Heresy Salamanders army as well, which I sold to a guy in Kent, which is nice.
For the purposes of our Battle Report channel that we've created now, I deeply regret that I didn't buy every single one of your armies when you sold them, because
we'd have everything. So
we'd have amazing army lists to choose from for that.
I'd have several Chaos, a couple Space Marines, Necrons,
Harlequins,
and this is only in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a really nice Dark Eldar army, which I bought from you.
Yep.
And then painted, and then sold. can't remember what else I had in the last 4 years.
I'm trying to think now. You had the Iron
Warriors
Warriors.
is your newest.
I had
You had-
Alpha Legion.
Yeah, you had Alpha Legion, and you had Red Scorpions.
Oh yes, I had them.
Yeah.
And
that was like
Smattering of Space Wolves.
I started them and I got rid of them, but I'm currently listening to Wolfsbane on Audible, and now I'm slowly collecting bits of Space Wolf's brew from the bits boxes at work. So that's fun. So I'm creating a small pile in the corner. I'm looking at doing guard in the near-ish future again. I am mainly a painter as a provider of armies to other people, but I spend 90% of my time outside of work painting. I very rarely get to play things like computer games, but I like the idea of having battles with fully painted armies, and it does ache me to play with non-painted models. I like to think that I'm approaching the idea of being a competitive player, but I think it's all a pipe dream.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And you got the knowledge base for sure. I always sort of feel
I've got
like...
if I had the money, I'd be an amazing player. But if I could buy the dream army, I'd be able to use it properly and win all the games.
If you had a
next
dad like Jake's.
Right there.
Yeah, I think like most men, I've got to just live with what I got and make the best of it. You know, just don't be disappointed by what it puts out. That's a life lesson we all need to learn.
Sound advice.
Yeah.
Cheers, Joe.
Okay.
On that depressing note, I'm going to go.
It's not the size of your army, it's how you use it.
Exactly.
I have an army of not many models, and Phil has an army of many models. So, yeah.
And that neatly segues into me, I guess.
It
I
does.
think you're being very generous when you say neatly, but we'll go with it as is.
Shoehorned in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got into 40k. I think it was around the second edition because I remember that cardboard box, cardboard dreadnought quite vividly. Before that, I actually played Warhammer Fantasy, and I had quite a big dwarf army. I think the very first models I got, bizarrely, were some Hobbit models that my uncle had bought me. And then that sort of led me into getting dwarves for fantasy. And then I started off with squats / Imperial Guard back in second and third edition. And then as squats got phased out, I played more Imperial Guard. And then during my university years, it all phased away as there were things like girls. Well, actually, it wasn't girls. There was the dream of girls. There was the general
Girls on TV.
student vibe, I guess. So yeah, I was trying to be cool, even though I wasn't. So I didn't dare go into a Games Workshop. And under the cover of darkness, I might sneak a look in and be like, "Ooh, what's this?"
That was the Games Workshop you were sneaking a look in, right?
And then and yes, not girls. It's definitely Games Workshop.
yeah.
And then it was actually, I think it was about 4, maybe 5 years ago now, where Richard, the person I'm doing the doubles event with, he got me back into Warhammer because I believe, Dan, did you get him back into Warhammer 40k as well?
I did, yeah. No, I'm guilty for that one. So yeah,
My wallet has effectively you to blame.
Absolutely. Well, me and Richard were working together at the time, and I mean, I've been super into it for years, and he was just sort of curious about like what the hell was going on with it and all the rest of it. It's quite funny as well, Rich, because Rich is a very interesting character. So when you when I introduced him to the hobby and he went down to the store, and it's not like, I mean, to be fair to Rich at the time, he wasn't exactly living hand to mouth. He had a good sort of disposable income, but it was so funny when I was like, yeah, that's, you need that carry case, Rich, for your army, and he was like, how bloody much? And so it was like, because I sort of sold it to him on this idea of, we'll do this doubles together. I'll buy the demon half, you buy the Thousand Sun half. we'll paint it up and we'll go together. And honestly, it's like it's only going to be like, what was it, like 80 quid or something for inside of it, because it was 2,000 sun units, a sorcerer, a helldrake, and some other stuff. Anyway, but then it was when he was there and he was told how much paint is, how much everything is. So yeah, but no, I was the gateway for him into the world of 40k. But yeah, and seemingly for you by extension.
Yeah, it was the same thing, because he invited me along to, I think, another doubles event, obviously one that you weren't going to, so I went along with him and used his model, so it was effectively the Blue Meanies army, so I got to play with his Thousand Suns, because they were relatively straightforward, like army to learn how to play in 6th edition. And then from there I went off and got my own army, so I got into Krieg, because obviously I was an Imperial Guard player at heart, and I'm also a complete design snob, so I went for the prettiest looking Imperial Guard regiment you could possibly get. And money wasn't too much of a problem with the job that I had at the time, so I was like, I'm going to get these, even though they're really expensive. And I was like, yeah, great.
Oh man, that's crazy, isn't it? Like, you have to be a special type of lunatic to do Krieg as your main army, for sure, especially as your first one out.
They're relatively expensive, I guess. I mean, there are more expensive GW models on a kind of unit cost, like model per cost basis. But
there aren't many, though.
No, there's not many, that's true. But the Krieg, they do look good. Yeah, and I like the sort of the narrative behind it, the whole kind of siege warfare, trench warfare, stuff like that. Really appealed to me. So that's what I got into them. And because of that got me into the painting side of the hobby predominantly more than the gaming. So in terms of what kind of things I like to do, as a kid I think it was more conversions, and I still love building and converting things, although you can't really do that too much with the Krieg army because they're just not very kit bash friendly to the same degree plastic kits are. But definitely painting's what I've got out of it. And then shameless plug time, I now have my own YouTube channel, and I do Beyond the Tabletop, where I do effectively painting guides mostly for my Krieg army as well.
It's hard to believe that you have only really been playing the Krieg for, like, what was you saying, 5 years now?
I think, yeah, 4, maybe 5 years.
Because I've always considered you, like, king of the Krieg. It's like you seem to be on every forum. You're, like, moderating and doing all that shit as well, aren't you?
Well, yeah, so I was one of the founders of the Krieg Facebook group, and we're now up to, I want to say 4,000, but it could be 2,000. I can't quite remember. It did double in size when 8th edition came along, so I'm quite active there. And obviously we go to all the Games Workshop events. I was sort of representing the Krieg at SM Battle Reports No Retreats down in Gibraltar in March this year, so that was quite a highlight.
So what you're saying is, Phil, is you legitimize us by being here.
Yeah, I'm the public face.
That's it.
That no one has ever seen, because I never put my face on any of my videos.
Nah,
we're trying to catch up. We're really trying.
That's why we're here, isn't it? You see, I suppose that beautifully segues on to why we're doing this, I guess, because we've been talking about this actually for 2 years off and on. It's always that weird thing that when we're driving home from Warhammer World or driving home from an event, we always, especially on the Warhammer World ones, we always end up on that KFC service station off the M1, and it's always where I had a great weekend doing that. We should do the podcast. And it kind of got to the point, at least from my side of things, where I was like, God, we've been talking about this for so bloody long. We should really just give it a go. And we've definitely got to a point where I think it's great in a way that we actually sort of gave it time and kept talking about it, because one of those things, it's like someone once told me about, like, if you're getting a tattoo or something, right? Like, it's a completely unrelated topic, I appreciate, but like, if you're getting a tattoo, you want a design, if you still want it 6 months later, you should do it. And I kind of got to that point with this podcast thing where I was like, we've been talking about this for 2 years off and on, and we still want to do it. So I thought, you know what? Screw it. And, from my side of things, it's not about the notoriety. It's not about being known. I don't really want to be known. I'm just really passionate about the hobby. I've always really enjoyed talking about the hobby. I want to create a community or a place where I can converse and get a chance to meet more hobbyists and be part of that more. But also, more than anything, I just sort of feel like, we offer quite a nice, interesting kind of different perspective on it, because we're not the most hardcore gamers in the world, although I play a lot of games predominantly, and we're not golden demon slayer sword standard painters, although Phil has had great success in that world, and Joe's obviously doing fantastic consistent paint jobs as well that I love to purchase. So
I've got a very mediocre Instagram account as well.
It's probably not worth mentioning that after what Phil just rattled off.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother. My 107 followers are very passionate about the work I do.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I recently got 1,000 followers on mine. That was a milestone I got like a week ago.
Yeah, but this...
Jesus, Phil, you can't let him have anything, can you?
No, you've got to crush that spirit.
Right, next time we stay at a hotel, I'm eating all the chocolate.
Well, there you go. But yeah, so I guess the general thrust of it is I mean, that's my thing with it, really, is I just wanted to give it a go. So I think for me, and I mean, obviously you guys, great to hear your side of it as well. But I mean, for me, it's just like, if 20, 50 people listen to this first one, if we get a few subscribers, that's freaking awesome, right? Like, I think my goal is that we do this every month for 12 months. We get to the end of it. We see where we are. If we've got a few hundred subscribers, Christ, if we've got 50 subscribers, I'll be like, you know what? We'll do it another year, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously, life and everything else dependent, and but I think that's it really for me. I'm not hoping to be Tabletop Tactics or whoever else is massive Frontline Gaming, someone of that ilk. I just sort of like getting a chance to get together and chat to my buddies about the hobby I really enjoy, and it's a great excuse to do that. Living remotely from each other as we do, I think it's cool. So yeah, what do you reckon, gents? Similar vibe or?
Oh, pretty much. Like when we finish work and we're on our drive home, we inevitably call each other and then chat for the half hour, 40 minutes. We're now basically doing this with an audience who can listen to the crap that we talk about.
There you are.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. It's doing sort of what we have been probably doing for the last definitely the last few months. We've been regularly talking in a podcast-esque fashion, but without recording it in any way. So it's good that we're finally doing it. And I think we not necessarily have something to offer, but I think we can come at the hobby from a good angle of those middle-of-the-road hobbyists, where we're not necessarily talking about the most competitive meta or competitive tactics or, like I said, the best painting, but we're definitely kind of good at everything, and we're relatively neutral. I mean, we're probably to an extent GW fanboys if we were to give ourselves a label, but we are also quite critical of GW when it needs to be, but we're not going to just needlessly slag them off for no reason just because we think that's a fun thing to do to validate ourselves. So I think our opinion will probably resonate hopefully with a lot of people out there because we're just the average hobbyists like everyone else.
Now we're going to talk about the recently released Imperial Knights Codex. Have a little talk about the new allegiances, household rules, stratagems, and warlord traits and relics and such things. But before we kind of go into that, maybe we should have a little talk about the new stuff that we like. So what about you, Phil? What is your favourite thing to come out of this codex?
Well, I've ummed and ahed about it a little bit. I was originally going to go for the Valiant because that's the model I've actually recently bought and has sort of spurred me on to sort of delve into a knight army. But I think I'm actually going to go for Canis Rex, who's so new he's not even out yet. I think it's quite interesting that they released a special character with actual, a unique kit, and I just like the fact that you get the Knight Scion pilot with him, and you get special rules for him sort of bailing out once the Knight has been destroyed.
Do we know on the Canis Rex front, because he's a free blade, right? Does he get the same role pros and cons thing, or does he just
No,
not?
it's preset.
It's preset. So in the free blade bit at the back of the book, he has 2 qualities and 2 burdens. So he has the last of their line and legendary hero, and then he has the obsessed with vengeance. Oh, so he only has the 1 burden.
Okay, so he has the burden that basically means that he can only target the nearest enemy unit.
Yeah.
If he fails his leadership test, obviously. Although, obviously, it's not a leadership test because leadership tests are different now. If he rolls 2d6 and equals or doesn't get under his leadership or whatever. Yes, there we go. Getting it right. On board with the new edition.
These leadership 9s are pretty hard to fail.
It is true. It is true. But it's equal to or under. Whereas in the old editions on a leadership test, equal to was a pass. Whereas in this instance, equal to is a fail.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what do you like about Canis Rex then, old Phil?
The model, it's nice to see a kind of sci-fi futuristic gun that's clearly inspired by the Forge World range. I don't know how the original designer feels about that the Games Workshop pinched his idea and used it on a plastic kit. I hope he will find it quite flattering. Yeah, it's kind of a cool model, got some cool rules. He obviously hits on a 2+, which is also really awesome and quite unique. And he's got a nice little synergizing buff with the armages, I believe, as well.
Is the Freedom's Hand a Thunder Gauntlet? I assume it is.
It's a gauntlet, but it's a relic, and obviously because he's a character, he won't be able to take it.
No, because that's what his specific.
Oh, that's his. Sorry, you mean?
Yeah.
So his one is ×2 strength, because that makes him strength 16. Mine is 4.
2d6 damage.
Yeah.
2d6, but anything rolled less than a 6 counts as 6. So it's only ever going to be equal to or better than a normal Thunderstrike Gauntlet.
Well, yeah, so it's going to be 6 or 12. Well, 6 to 12.
And he is weapon skill 2+, so the negative means he hits on 3s, which is pretty good.
Sorry, what was the positive abilities he's got now in terms of the thing? So it's Canis Rex and so on so have legendary hero and last of their lines. So legendary hero is once per battle they can reroll blah blah blah, and last of the line reroll hit rolls of 1. So obviously if he's up against a big unit, he can still reroll 1s. So that's good. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's also, if you take him as a warlord, he gains the fearsome reputation warlord traits, which is enemy units must subtract 1 from their leadership while they're within 12 inches, and whilst they're within 6 of your warlord, subtract 2 from their leadership instead. That's
pretty damn tasty, actually, to be fair. That's good. That's not bad at all.
Not too bad, only if you're obviously within range of something that's going to actually be affected by leadership, because there's so much that ignores the morale phase at the moment.
Well, yeah, it's all the little units, isn't it, that don't seem to ever care, because they're leadership 9, and oh no, you killed 1, but it doesn't matter, because maths.
Yeah, but if you're within close combat range, so if you're within 6, you're -2, so that could be enough to, if you've used your feet to charge into a swarm of infantry, and there's only a couple of models left, you're just more likely to finish them off in the morale phase, rather than be stuck in combat against 2 or 3 models that you would have otherwise killed off.
Nice indeed. And then when he's running around on foot, to be fair, he's no slouch either, I suppose, for what he is. I mean, he's still got 4 wounds, and weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength and toughness 3, 3 attacks, leadership 9, 4+
yeah,
save.
and you've then got to kill him to get Slayer Warlord.
It's not bad. That's not bad at all.
He's your Warlord, that is.
What's he armed with when he's running around?
An architect
little pistol. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, the architect pistol.
Strength 5, -2, 2 damage.
Jeez,
15-inch
that's not bad.
range.
It's not bad.
Not bad.
How many points is old Canis Rex coming in at these days?
Do you know what? I don't know.
Let's have a look-see at the numbers.
450.
Well, that's with his knight.
Yeah, everything included by the looks of it.
Blimey heck. That's not bad.
Yeah, because it says including war gear, so it's a flat price.
That's not
Which
too
brings
bad.
him in cheaper than a Crusader and a Valiant.
Well, yeah, definitely a Valiant. I mean, yeah, he's a little cheaper than a Crusader as well, isn't it? Because Crusader's it's 104 points for the rapid fire battle cannon with stubber.
It's 494.
Oh yeah, no, nice, yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's not bad at all.
The Las Impulsor's pretty good. It gives you a bit of an all-rounder in terms of a weapon profile.
It sounds really mad. I've not actually looked at him at all up to this point. It's weird when you sort of said that. I was like, oh yeah, that guy. I guess it's because he doesn't have a model yet that I just sort of stopped paying attention.
Well, like you could make your own in terms of
Yeah,
you could buy the Forge World
one
upgrade
or
pack.
two people convert them from the, like you said, from the Forge World one. And it'll be interesting to actually compare the weapon profile to see if it's exactly the same or if they've tweaked it slightly. And if so, which one's the better of the two, the Forge World model or the special character?
Well, it looks like, I mean, obviously the kit's not out yet, but it looks like there's a decent amount of new bits to it as well, because he looks like he's got his own tabard thing, or whatever you want to call it. So he's got that, he's got the gun. Looks like they've actually done some raised actual like moulding on the shield. Obviously he's got the they're just using the free blade symbol, but he's obviously got his own helmeted face as well, and obviously the ridiculously big gun. That's quite cool.
Yeah.
I do like the name. Oh, sorry, Joe.
I said the gun seems to have been stolen off the Knight Atropos. I'm just looking at the Forge World website now.
That's the one. I'm not too keen on the sort of battle cannon style sort of gun shield that it's attached to. That sort of feels like it's just sticking slightly out of place. If that was removed, I think it'd probably look a bit better.
Yeah. Also, as well, is that? Oh no, is that? Has he got some sort of like? I haven't read this because looking at the model, it doesn't look like he. It looks like he's got a flamer where the stubber is. Have I just?
Oh, it's a multi-laser.
Oh yeah, multi-laser, which is quite unusual. So that's new as well.
That's pretty cool.
It's basically a slightly better heavy stubber.
I feel like I should have paid more attention to this guy. Maybe I need to own this when he comes out.
Yeah.
I like
So
it.
it's interesting that he's the first special character in this codex, but I don't know if you remember the original special character, which was, I think it's pronounced Gerantius. He's the sort of turquoise one.
The cover guy from the Free Blade iPhone game.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so he originally had special rules in the last edition, and it was actually really good because he had, I think he regained wounds every turn on it was either automatically on a very low roll, and was just a bit crazy. And it's a bit of a shame, like, that they've not added him in to this one.
If I remember correctly about him, though, he was a knight errant, which meant that he was already on a bit of a downside because the knight errant was probably the weakest of the variants, and he was ridiculously pointed, if I remember as well. Like, I think in the old edition, a knight started at like 350 or something, and then he was like 475 or something. Again, I'm quoting from memory, so forgive me if I'm entirely wrong here. But I guess if you were gonna take a single knight back in the day, because I mean, back in 7th edition, the logic was you either had 3 knights or you had none at all. So I guess if you were gonna take one for whatever reason, you may as well take the ridiculous character one. But it is a shame. You're absolutely right. It is a shame that he sort of ceased to exist. But I guess you can still represent him with the free blade rulings if you wanted to use them.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why they've done it, in terms of he's just a free blade now, so you kind of create your own special rules.
The thing I'm sort of struggling with in terms of the general perception of free blades is this broad consensus that they're no good. And I think I can understand why in tournament play people actually look at free blades and go, no, because there's that random element. But But I don't think they're that bad overall. I just don't necessarily know. I don't know for tournament abuse.
You've got to look at it from the point of view of you're losing out on your household trait and access to the household stratagems, and in return, what you can get for it is potentially +1 wound and +1 leadership, and that leadership only counts in terms of gaining the burden every turn.
Yeah.
So some of those positives just don't outweigh not only the negatives, but also the negative of not having access to those household traditions. Because everyone obviously goes on about Hawkshroud, so it's like, why would you swap out that ability, that durability that you can get for what is potentially quite a minimal bonus? I think we probably deviated off topic slightly from my Canis Rex topic.
It's true.
Dan, do you want to talk about your favourite part of the book?
Yeah, sure. So so like so many people, my favourite part of the book is really just the Knight Gallant, because I'm pretty one-dimensional, and the people on the internet have said they're well good now, and I can't help but agree with them because they're amazing. Like, it's crazy to think that that the Knight Gallant was such a laughing stock in the previous editions. Like, I don't think I ever saw anyone with a Knight Gallant in the old editions. Only when you really interacted with some of the real, like, you know, very, very hobby-orientated, very kind of fluff-orientated players. But even they still favoured the Paladin. Like, it was incredibly rare to come across Gallants. You know, I picked up the Renegade box, and yeah, you know, sure as anything, it got assembled into a Gallant, because these things are just crazy now, especially with the relics that they get access to. So obviously, and the stratagems as well. You know, the improvements to the Thunderstrike Gauntlet, the fact that you can take it as the relic variant to make it damage 8 and remove any minus modifiers to your to hit rolls. Yeah, these things are just horrendously efficient now.
But would you reckon it's worth taking 2 of them, or just 1 and loading it up with the relic gauntlet, and then using that 1 Gallant for the not the crush them stratagem, but the power fist-esque stratagem?
Yeah,
because if you're taking 2, it's not going to be as efficient. But I guess it gives you the redundancy if one of them gets wiped out.
No, absolutely. I think realistically, again, my 2,000 point Knight army that I'm working on at the moment is 1 Knight Gallant, 1 Knight Paladin, a Knight. Now you're asking me to remember which one I went with. The Knight Valiant, not the Castellan, the Valiant, because again I love the whole crazy harpoon flamer combo. I think that's absolutely hilarious. And again, I just love the novel idea of, you know, the whole idea of like Imperial Knights back in the day, like the idea that this guy has this ridiculous harpoon. It's like such a mad kind of weapon idea for a knight. But yeah, so in 2,000 points that, and then 3 of the auto cannon armatures, because they're just so freaking efficient again. So yeah, I think, you know, if I was looking at it as an army, I think 1 Gallant is enough. I think you don't really, with Imperial Knights, want to get too stuck in one dimension, because they already have a lot of weird matchup weaknesses. So I think if you over-index, especially at the point of, you know, if you over-index on one thing, if you took 3 Knight Gallants, you're so vulnerable to flyers, you're so vulnerable to, you know, getting across the board and you know, heavy weapon armies, you know. I mean, if you came up against...
I think getting across the board it's like one weakness, and I guess that's all down to a role in terms of what your deployment's going to be. Because you'll either be very well, or you'll be doing long edge tables, and you're going to be running across for a couple of turns.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, again, if your opponent's smart and they put a lot of their squishier stuff towards the real back of the board, that's going to present problems. And I think that's the interesting thing about it as a unit, is that it does have certain vulnerabilities. But again, I like that as a unit. I prefer the notion of having an area of weakness around it, because I think that makes it more interesting to play. I think if it was just ridiculously good on all occasions, what's the point? So I think that's the thing. When that Night Gallant gets in, and it's going full throttle and it's tearing through hordes of whatever, and then strangling the life out of a Baneblade or something hilarious. It seems like a really fun, cool, interesting addition to it.
It's a really good distraction unit as well, because it's relatively cheap in knight terms. It's only like 367 points. So even if you don't get it into combat first turn, it's always going to be up in your opponent's face. And your opponent has to deal with it, because if they don't, it's going to cause them a lot of trouble in the next turn, which gives the rest of your army a bit of relative breathing space at the back of the board.
Yeah, I'd actually be inclined to make him your warlord. Give him your Iron Shield warlord trait, which gives you a 4-up invulnerable save, and then every turn you can use your stratagem to tilt your shields to give you a 3-up invulnerable save, and then obviously you can give them the relic to give them the special gauntlet, which is a lot of eggs in one basket, but you make him pretty durable with a 3-up invuln save.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be burning through CPs quite quickly, though. But you can have him charging up the field, everything's going to be shooting at him, and you have over a 50% chance of ignoring everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's the added fun as well with the Gallant stuff, because it wants to get stuck in.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
If it does get stuck in, you do still have the stratagem where you can improve the odds of blowing up your knight and so on and so forth, which is, everyone sort of talks about that as being utilised with the whole dual core big knight thing, but it's still useful on a Gallant. I think there's flexibility in that. It's like an Eversaw assassin. It's the Imperial Knight Eversaw, and
there's a really good. I think it's I won't say Hawkshroud, but it's not. It's the let me have a quick look at it. I think it's the Terran stratagem, which allows you to attack a second time. Obviously, It doesn't necessarily synergize that well with the other Terran traits potentially. But the fact that you can attack twice with your guy that's your close combat monster, that's almost worth taking that household just for that ability.
It's got 5 attacks inbuilt as well as the usual 4, and it's hitting on 2s opposed to 3s. So it would have 15 stomp attacks. So if it's attacking twice, that's 30 stomp attacks hitting on 2s.
Yeah.
And there is not much in the game that's going to survive that.
And then anything that is still there, you can use your Death Grip to finish it off, especially if it's a bigger unit.
You can also boost the amount of attacks with other warlord traits or house tactics as well, potentially. Obviously, that doesn't mean you can double the number of it, because that's specific to that one house, but. It's really interesting. As I say, I think the Night Gallant is the real winner in this book, and I think I mean of all of it, I think it is the most interesting element. So yeah, no, I'm definitely. I mean, yeah, they're definitely the most impressive thing to me, and the thing I definitely like the most about it. How about you, Joe? What do you think?
Well, I am, and I stick by this, a massive fan of the Armiger Warglaive, because it didn't come out of the gates with the best of strides, because no one really used it because it was massively overpointed.
Well, you say no one used it, Joe.
Forgebane.
Yeah, I said no one used it. I got 3 of them, and had relative success with them. But they're just way more expensive than they should be. But they're essentially better than a Contemptor Dreadnought, in my opinion. 12 wounds, toughness 7, 3-up save, 4 attacks, and potentially 3 shots out of its 30-inch ranged thermal spear, which is a melter gun. It's got a move of 14 inches, which basically means that even on a 24-inch deployment, you could knock out a first turn charge. And being able to take them in little squadrons of 3 is amazing. It's absolutely incredible. And now, with the new points reduction, it's coming in at 177 points, which I'm pretty sure is cheaper than a Contemptor Dreadnought as well now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the only I mean, you know, I only ever question the statement of it's better than a Contemptor Dreadnought is like saying it's better than, I don't know. It's like it's not as if Contemptor Dreadnoughts are super competitive or super awesome, but I do get where you're going.
It's comparable. The only other comparable that you can really pick out is something like an Onager Dune Crawler, which is almost the same amount of points. The Onager Dune Crawler is the same toughness. It has the same amount of wounds, the same save, leadership and strength. But the Dune Crawler is designed to knock out tanks. It's got like a 36-inch range, strength 10 gun, -4, and it's D6 damage. But anything underneath that, underneath 3, always counts as 3 damage. But its gun's only D3 shots, just like the Warglaive. But apart from that, it can't do anything else. Whereas the Warglaive is a pretty good assault monster. It's got the usual Knight 4 attacks, but it's hitting at strength 12, -3, flat 3 damage as well.
Yeah, they also added in that sweep attack on the chain cleaver, which means it's more likely to not get just stuck in combat with a bunch of.
Oh god, yeah! Like it gives it 8 attacks, which is great. Because I ran my 3 against a Necron player at a tournament, and it's getting bogged down, and they couldn't fall back and shoot just like normal knights. Whereas I think if my 3 armigers all had 8 attacks instead of 4, I would have been clearing a lot more Necron units away before they regenerated.
I suppose the thing as well, when you use that free armature Warglaive list at that particular tournament, they would cost you what, 240 each, 250?
Oh yeah, 240. So they've gone down by 40. They've gone down by 63 points. So 189 is what I've essentially saved, which could have got me another Warglaive.
I suppose
the cost. Yeah, I could have run 4.
I suppose the only other thing that might be close to comparable to them is Nemesis Dreadknights would probably be a potential comparison for them as a unit. I think Nemesis Dreadknights are coming in at around 190. So I guess when you're looking at sort of comparable units in its range, yeah, it's Contemptor Dreadnought, Nemesis Dreadknight, something of that nature. Obviously,
there's also the Devil Dog. I think it is the melter gun equivalent of the Hellhound, which is a similar thing in terms of toughness 7, 12 wounds, and you've got a 1 big single shot melter gun on it.
Yeah,
and I think they will be a very similar points cost. I think probably the Devil Dog will be cheaper, but not by a lot. But then you're gaining the ability to have a 5-up invuln save, and you can actually deal with stuff in close combat. So I know out of the 2, which I'd rather have.
And like a lot of units that are priced around the same kind of points that have similar stats, those other units are dedicated to like one sole purpose. Like the Dread Knight is run in and punch something. And the Devil Dog or the Dune Crawler is like, I'm going to shoot something till it dies. Whereas the Warglaive is a jack of all trades.
I'd say the Dread Knight's probably more of a jack of all trades. I'd say with the Nemesis Dread Knight, because you've got the psychic powers, you've got the melee capabilities, you've got some pretty reasonable shooting things with heavy psi cannons or Gatling silencers. I mean, admittedly, no one takes Nemesis Dread Knights anymore, because if they are taking them, they're Grand Masters in Nemesis Dread Knights. But But anyway, yeah, no, just as a series of comparisons. I'm surprised, man, because I was expecting you to go for the Helverin armature.
Well, I do love the Helverin.
Hmm.
I think it's great. Like the guns are great. It puts out 4d3 autocannon shots, but they're damage 3 instead of damage 2.
And they ignore the penalty to hit for moving as well.
Oh god, yeah. But I don't think they're as fun to use. As much as I like the idea of being a competitive player, I think they're a bit boring to use because they just sit in one
also
place
look a lot better, I think, as well.
Oh yeah, the Warglaive is a lot more of an aggressive, posable thing, whereas the Helverins just sit there and their guns just kind of jut out like little chopsticks.
It does do a ton of damage, though, man. I was playing against Mike a couple of weekends ago. Not a couple of weekends ago, in fact. Get my dates wrong, but yeah, a while ago. And we play tested it with the rules, and yeah, just terrifying, man. The amount of damage that those things do when you take 3 of them is really scary. So yeah, no.
And they're one of the units that don't really need to worry about household traits, like the warlord traits, because no household traits really benefits the Helverin. It's just a really good standalone unit.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
You can also, so one thing we've not talked about is actually the new Knight Preceptor, which is basically the generic version of Canis Rex. And I assumed Canis Rex had this ability, but he doesn't, so it's just unique to the Preceptors. And that's the Mentor special ability, which means you basically give armigers within 6 inches reroll hit rolls of a 1.
Oh, that's good. I haven't seen that.
A nice synergy between the two. So you could either have it with Helverins sort of sat on the back line, or you can take it with a much more aggressive role and have the Warglaives with it instead.
That's funny, isn't it? I didn't even really pay attention to Canis Rex. I definitely didn't pay attention to the Knight Preceptor.
So with the lack of the Knight Preceptor and the lack of Canis Rex and the way the kits are designed, we talked before about the. I thought that they're just going to release it as an upgrade pack because it's just an additional knee pad, an additional gun, and a different faceplate, and then a little dude to go with it. But if it's for 2 things, so a generic knight and a special character, maybe they'll release it on its own.
Yeah, that would be my guess, I think.
But then I kind of think they're going to end up with too many knight boxes, because you're going to have the Knight Preceptor box, the Knight Paladin box, the Knight...
But they don't do the... Well, it looks like they've discontinued the standard old Knight Paladin without additional gun stuff. So...
It's just the Warden box set.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through and read them all out? Or
all right. So you've got of the Imperialis. The first one is House Terrian. When determining the distance that a unit with Terry, the chocolate orange house. When they advance or charge, roll an additional d6 and discard the lowest, which is incredibly situational, because it only really benefits things like the Armiger Warglaive, because all of its weapons are assault.
Or Gallants, I guess.
Or Gallant, but then the thing about the Gallant needs to be able to charge, and if it advances, it can't charge.
I'm sure there's a stratagem, I think it's generic, that allows you to advance and then charge. So it would combo well with that.
Okay.
But we can look through that when we get to the stratagems.
And then you've got House Griffith, which is our Lord Duncan's. which is add 1 to the attack characteristics of a model with this household tradition during the turn in which it's charged, performed a heroic intervention. In addition, a model with this household tradition can perform heroic interventions as if it were a character, which would be great for an army of knight gallants, because because that means they've got 6 attacks on the charge.
5 out of 10, I give that.
Yeah, it's an odd one because most knight armies are going to take knight lances in terms of their detachment composition, and they're going to gain the character ability anyway. So it's gaining that last bit is quite situational in terms of.
Only one within a lance gets the character keyword. There is a stratagem that allows you to make everyone a character and then give them relics as well.
Yeah, you're right on that one.
Yeah.
It is literally on the same page.
So if you're running a very aggressive knight army, I think that's really, really good. And then you've got House Hawkshroud.
I hear they're good.
They're very
House
good.
Everyman.
Models' household tradition double the number of wounds they have remaining for the purposes of determining what characteristics to use on the damage table, which is brilliant. Because as long as you've got more than 7 wounds, you're always going to be classing yourself as the top level, which is great for just.
You'd have to go down to 3 wounds to go down to the bottom.
Yeah, which is brilliant. So so everyone who's using knights is just gunline armies. It's just brilliant just for keeping up sustained firepower. You've got House Cadmus, which is re-roll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase for attacks made by the models with this household tradition against units which only contain models with a wounds characteristic of 12 or less.
So that's pretty high.
Yeah, it's basically it's really, really good. This one I find really weird because I kind of feel like that should be an ability that House Griffith should have. So, like, if an army is getting +1 attack, so it's primarily a close combat army, why not give it the re-roll of 1s whilst it's in combat as well? I just don't understand the trade-off within the two.
Yeah, I don't think it's much.
I guess they're trying to theme them slightly. So, for example, Cadmus is clearly aimed at not necessarily hordes, but they're not really monster hunters in terms of taking out big tanks or big wound units. So they've got to. There's only so many special rules you can have, and they've got to theme them in some way to make each household different.
It's a fair stretch to get anything with more than 12 wounds. Like you're looking, that's like Land Raiders, Lehman Russes. Yeah.
I love the idea of a squad of models with each one of them having 11 wounds each, though.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell kind of unit's that gonna be? That's crazy. I suppose it's units of how many wounds have the armatures got?
12, but you deploy them on the table as a unit, so they're 1 drop of 3 armatures.
So
after that, they act independently.
So if you were having a fight with a unit of armatures, you can still re-roll them ones.
No.
Yeah. Well, no, because they count as individual models as soon as the game starts.
It would still work against an individual armature, yeah. Because they've got 12 or less.
Yeah. So it's based on the individual. So it's not it's each model in the unit's individual wound characteristic as opposed to the cumulative. So if you were to fight against 13 orcs, this still works.
Yeah,
that's how I read it as well.
But it just wouldn't work against a super heavy that's got 20 plus.
Or 13 plus.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it.
That's it, mate. That's it.
And then the last one is House Morton, which is add 1 to the hit rolls in the fight phase for attacks made by a model with its household tradition during the turn in which they charged was charged, or performed a heroic intervention. So
That
it's
again
another.
combos really well with your fists.
Yeah, but the thing I don't understand about Cadmus, Morton, Griffith, and Terran is they're all close combat based.
Yeah, I think that is the takeaway of this codex is close combat knights weren't particularly good, and they've really pushed for making knights really good in close combat.
Yeah.
But it is certainly one of their more kind of unique USPs as an enterprise, isn't it? Like the idea of the knights where they were these gallant warriors that threw themselves into combat. So I guess focusing on combat is only sensible.
Yeah, it's the more honourable way of fighting your foe,
Absolutely.
rather than sitting at the back with your
By
castellan.
tap dancing on them. And then the other side of the coin, the Questor Mechanicus house traditions. You've got House Raven. Models with this household tradition do not suffer the penalties to their hit rolls for advancing and firing assault weapons. Furthermore, during a turn in which a unit with this household tradition advances, all of its heavy weapons are treated as assault weapons, e.g. a heavy 3 weapon is treated as an assault 3 weapon.
It's good.
So basically, you can always move and shoot at your max ballistic skill.
Yeah, or advance and shoot at your max ballistic.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
is really, really good. Because
Well, would you still not? Oh no, you don't get the penalty for rolling to hit and advancing. Yeah, so it would be your full.
Yeah.
ballistic
I
skill.
suppose the question is around this one though is that why would you advance? I.e., what would the purpose of advancing be? The
Well, I
purpose
guess
of
to probably get on.
say someone got into your back lines, I suppose.
That's what, well, yeah, but the thing is, so
You
if
wanted to avoid being in combat with them.
I don't know though. With Imperial Knights, you're sort of okay with that. My thing is with this is sort of like, as good as it is, it's like the sort of thing that if this was on, I don't know, a unit of Space Marines or an infantry unit, you go flipping out. That's amazing. Like I can take a unit of heavy flamer devastators and run them forwards and blah 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 because I want to run them forwards. I want to get them stuck in. But with like knights, like the stuff that benefits from this is shooty knights. Well, shooty knights.
Also your armagers, your
Oh yeah, true.
your melt
I suppose.
armagers are going to be pretty useful. Though weirdly, the Helvrians don't get affected by it because they're heavy weapons that ignore the penalty for shooting. I mean, you can then advance them if you want, but they've got 16 range, so you shouldn't really be needing to move them around at all.
Yeah, it's just interesting, as I say. It was more just the perspective of as cool as an ability as it is. I don't know necessarily if it's ever going to be that useful. I mean, it could be. I mean, if you've got an army full of paladins and wardens and errants where you want to get them stuck in to use their titanic feet and you want to move and shoot with them, then fair enough, I guess. I mean, go for it. But I don't know. It's good. It's one of the better abilities. I just don't know necessarily if it's definitely not the best. Is one.
I think if you play Maelstrom a lot, it would help. So if you're running a full army of knights, you're going to have a maximum of 5 to 7 models on the table. So if you need a knight to get across the table quickly to secure an objective, maybe gaining that extra 6 inches is going to really help. And it means that they can still do something when they get there as well.
Yeah, no, true.
And then another household is House Tyrannus. Roll a dice each time a model with this household tradition loses a wound, unless that wound was lost as a result of a mortal wound. On a 6+, the mortal wound is. Hang on. I'll say that all over again. Basically, if you lose a wound on a 6, it isn't lost unless it's a mortal wound.
In my
So
opinion,
that's, I think. Go on, Dan.
Go for it, Phil. Go for it.
I was going to say, it basically gives you an extra 4 or so wounds.
Yeah, on
3 or 4
average.
wounds if you're lucky.
Unless you
Which
get
isn't too
smited.
bad.
Yeah. In my opinion, this is probably the best one. It's the one I like the most, anyway. It's the one I'm warmed towards. I like ignoring wounds on 6s. It's very useful.
If you have if you're rolling really hot in a game, and you've got like 10 wounds left, and someone's like, "Fine, I'm going to shoot 11." I don't know, something that's enough to like guarantee you dying.
Las cannons.
Well, 11 las cannons is pretty extreme. Okay, 4 las cannons.
4 las cannons wouldn't get it done. You've got to go
4
8.
las cannons, and they're like, "I've gone 12 wounds to you because I've done 12 wounds," and you're like, "Aha! I've rolled 3 6s. I'm still alive," and then you can laugh in their face.
I mean, to be fair, even if you didn't roll any 6s in that scenario, you've still got 12 wounds left.
Well, no, because if you've got 11 wounds left,
Oh, I see.
someone does 12 las cannons to you. It's very specific a situation.
No, it's universally useful. I mean, ultimately, you're talking about, as Phil said, you take it as a warlord, you boost its invuln, you use the stratagem, you got like 3 up invuns, and then so you can be ignoring those shots all together on 3s, and then if damage does go through on a 6, you can ignore it. I mean, sometimes you can roll really hot on that. I mean, I've played a lot of hemlocks in my time with spirit stones, and the amount of games where I've had them alive on 1 wound, much to my opponent's frustration, is absolutely hilarious. And I think I'm a big fan of ignoring wounds on 6s. That's
yeah. I can imagine in maybe not every game, but in quite a lot of games, you're going to get that moment where your opponent really wants your model dead, and you're just going to save those last few wounds, which keeps it alive for another turn.
Yep.
And depending on what stratagems you have, so there's one stratagem which allows you to act as if you're on your maximum wounds profile. So if you're still alive for a turn and you've got that stratagem in the bank, that's a huge bonus. So, I do think you're right. It's probably not the one I would go for, but it is definitely a really useful one, for sure.
It's up there. It's well good.
Yeah.
And another household is House Crast. You can re-roll fail to hit rolls in the fight phase for a model with this household tradition during any turn in which it's was charged, or performed a heroic intervention. In addition, you can re-roll all failed to hit rolls in the fight phase for a model with this household tradition against Titanic units, which completely makes House Cadmus redundant.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking the same thing, but this one is really good.
Yeah. So why would I only re-roll 1s when I can re-roll everything and I can punch the crap out of other knights?
It is the best of the combat arrangements, isn't it? Because, I mean, obviously as well, the House Griffith guys, I mean, admittedly, they get the whole... add 1 to the attack characteristics, isn't it? So that's different on that side of things. There was another one in there. Anyway, no, long story short, it's the best of the combat variants. If you got to go combat... because obviously your knights will degrade as the game goes on. If you're hitting on 4s re-rolling everything is so much better than 4s re-rolling 1s, assuming the model's got less than 12. Yeah, no, without a doubt, that is yeah. Yeah,
and like there's the Mechanicum stratagem allows you to which is probably the best stratagem in the book, allows you to count your model as being on full wounds, regardless to how many wounds you've taken. So if you're on your last 2 wounds, you pop that stratagem and be like, I'm going to charge you now and then bust you with all of my attacks, which I think is amazing. And then the last one is House Volker, which is re-roll hit rolls of 1 for a model with this household tradition whenever you are resolving an attack with a ranged weapon that is targeting the closest enemy unit.
So this is the only shooting one out of all of them.
Yeah.
But it's quite limited because it's got to be closest target.
I think competitively, this is the most useful next to Hawk's Shroud, because if you're running a shooty knight as an attachment, shooty knights with an attachment your army. So you're running it with an assault-based army. You need something that's going to be able to clear your opponent's like shields and all your opponent's blocking units. So say someone's got a unit of 30 cultists sat in their front line, or has even infiltrated right in front of your army. You can use your knight with improved shooting to clear them out to allow the rest of your army to move through.
I guess it's sort of it's good if you're taking something like the paladin where you've got one shooting gun and a close combat weapon. But otherwise, if for example you're taking a crusader, you always want to split fire. So one of those guns isn't going to be targeting your closest enemy unit and therefore not benefiting from it. Unless, of course, you're firing all your shots into your closest unit that is also one that you don't want to charge at as well. I mean, it does feel like it's got quite a limited use. Or at least, because I think with knights, you want to be splitting your fire quite a lot to try and target as many units as possible. And chances are you're going to want to be charging at the closest unit, unless you want to kill a screening unit, for example, and then charge to another unit beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, for me, I don't know if I'd rate it as highly as what you did, Joe, in saying it's probably one of the other good options. I think it's a good option, but it's not great. I think of the two options for me, it's either it's the survivability stuff. It's Hawkshroud or it's Tyrannus, in my opinion. Those are the two MVPs in terms of things there. The only issue with Tyrannus is that its warlord trait of improving AP is all right, but nothing necessarily incredible. Although obviously with the Gatling cannons and things like that, that's pretty awesome. And then on Hawkshroud, it's at the start of battle round, but before the first turn begins, select one unit in your opponent's army, add one to hit rolls made for your warlord against that unit. Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, Hawkshroud has a better warlord trait for sure, but again, I think those are the two for me. If I was going with any households, I think those are the two to go for. But as I said, Tyrannus, because it's Mechanicus, which is better stratagems in my opinion, as we'll talk about shortly, and I just think staying alive on sixes is crazy useful. So that's my vote.
I mean, I think the Volker one might work well when you combo it with Helverins, because each one of those probably will only be targeting one unit, and with their long range, maybe you will just want to be shooting at whatever is the closest unit. But then you can do that same effect of re-rolling ones just by taking a Preceptor. So it's tomato, I guess.
Absolutely. The only other thing as well in terms of the Mechanicus stuff is you still do have the relative abilities of using Adeptus Mechanicus, Dominuses and things of that nature to boost your abilities as well. Because obviously there is still now crossover between the Imperial Knight book and the AdMech book. So there is opportunities there to look at, buff type units that can not necessarily affect knights directly, I don't think, but there could be options in it. I haven't looked at the synergies in all seriousness.
It will also be interesting to see what the FAQ is, because I imagine they might clarify that. So if you're, for example, taking a Mechanicum Knight from the Mechanicum book, I imagine it might not have access to the Imperial Knight stuff. Or will it be able to get, say for example, will it be able to gain the Canticles? Because I think there's a way of doing that for the AdMech Knights.
I think the thing is because, I mean, if you're Questor Mechanicus, you've got to assume that then you're Mechanicus aligned, and then in addition to that, the way that the Knight rules is the only way you could take them, because they don't have the keyword, Adeptus Mechanicus. They had keywords Knight Questor or whatever it was, or Knight.
In the Mechanicum Codex, there is a stratagem that affects Questor Mechanicus keyword,
Yeah.
That's the
which
one that gives it
which
canticles.
then allows them to get the canticles for that turn.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, looking at it, I do think House Tyrannus may possibly be the best one, because they have a specific stratagem, which is 2 command points called our Darkest Hour. So use a stratagem when a House Tyrannus model from your army is reduced to 0 wounds but did not explode. Roll a d6 on a 4+, set the model up again at the end of the phase as close as possible to its previous position and more than an inch away from the enemies, with d3 wounds remaining.
That's really
So-
good.
Even if your opponent manages to somehow kill this thing, you could be like, aha, 2 points, I got you, and your knight gets back up again. And then in your turn, you can hit it with the stratagem to counter being 4 wounds.
But
And
you
then-
can't because that's Questor Mechanicus.
Well, House Tyrannus
Is
is a
Mechanicus.
Mechanicus.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Terran, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no, you're right, yeah.
Which
That's
is why I
the
think
one.
it is the best one overall. The only thing that's interesting with that stratagem is how. So, say for example, someone shoots you with, I don't know, a shadow sword, and they go, "I'm going to shoot you with this," and the what is it, the volcano cannon, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Volcanic, yeah.
Yeah, so they go, "I'll shoot you with the volcano cannon and all the las cannons and all the heavy bolters, blah blah blah," all firing at that. And say the volcano cannon kills it. The way this is sort of sequenced is, does that then negate all of the other shots because you've got it to
Yes.
0 wounds?
Yes, because it's died and then it is set back up again afterwards.
Wow. So
So-
that could be double frustrating for someone who's obviously
Yeah.
pours a lot of shots into it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it specifically says that you set the model back up at the end of a phase.
Oh wow, is that when it says it?
Yeah,
You
so
just,
that's why it's so good. So you'd negate everything else that
Oh
was
my.
going to potentially shoot at it. Obviously, it could still get taken out in, say, the fight phase. But
Wow.
yeah, that's what's pretty good. I mean, it's 2 CP, so it's quite expensive.
And it's
so
still
you want a 4-up,
50-50.
But you could re-roll that 4-up with another CP.
Yeah. Royalty says again, end of phase, as close as possible as the previous position and more than 1 away from enemy. Yeah, good lord. The
Yeah, and it also says at the end of the phase. So you remove it from the table. Say the volcano cannon is the first shot fired turn 1. And then your opponent does, and then all of its shots are wasted, and your opponent does all of his other shooting for his army, and then you bring it back. So after a shooting phase,
yeah.
which can also really screw over their battle plan. So say they're hoping to kill the knight so they can charge past it to get into your other units behind it, and you could be like, aha, and then block them off again, forcing them to charge, but to potentially take wounds in Overwatch.
Yeah, that's true.
And then obviously as well, if he is your warlord as well, that's denying Slay the Warlord for the sequence until he returns. And then obviously when he does return, you remove the opportunity for your opponent to then attempt to kill him with other shooting attacks in the opening turn. So also as well, that could stuff like a First Blood as well, which is pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good, but it will just eat up your CPs. So
Oh, God,
unless
yeah,
you're
'cause-
taking like a CP farm of guard or admech, an average knight army on its own is only going to have about 6 CP, maybe.
I think the best option for if you're going to try and run a knight army is take just the 3 knights on their own and then a double battalion of guard.
Or potentially Mechanicus if we catch up on those rules and discover they're really useful for them.
Well, I guess so, but they are quite expensive to put on the table. And
No, because they're tiny little units of Rangers. They're only 5-man units.
but it's like a 30-inch range bolt gun. But I'm pretty sure Mechanicum don't have a way of recycling.
No, so I think Guard have access to the Grand Strategist Warlord trait, which is on a 5-up. You can gain your CP back when you've spent it, and then Corvo's Aquila, which is a relic. So when your opponent spends a stratagem, regardless of cost, you can gain one of those CPs back on a 5-up.
But
so
if
that's
you
a good way of gaining all of that CP.
If you take the Grand Stratagem Warlord trait, you then lose out on one of your knights being the Warlord, and that's going to take.
Then you can pay for 1 CP, I think, to turn one of your knights into a Warlord.
Let's have a look.
What you want to do is
it's the Exalted Courts stratagem. So it's 1 or 3 CP. Use it before battle. Choose 1 Questoris class or Dominus class. Model in your army for 1 CP, or 2 models, 3 CP. Each one gains the character keyword, and you can choose a Warlord trait for them, but they don't count as the Warlord for all other purposes.
Oh, that's pretty good.
What you really want is you want to take a free knight detachment, then you take an Ultramarines battalion, and then you take Guilliman, and there you go. That's a ton of CPs right there, surely. Because Guilliman gives you 3 CPs. He then also...
Yeah, but he's what, 400 points now?
400 points, yeah. Yeah, but you take one of him.
He's a knight on his own right.
And he allows your Imperial Knights to reroll 1s.
Plus, doesn't he give you a bonus to charge as well?
Oh, yeah, probably. He's crazy.
He does a lot.
He does loads. So there you go. Knights surrounding Guilliman. That's the way forwards.
Jesus.
Actually, quickly talk about the Death Grip stratagem, because it's the like number 1 stratagem that everyone seems to be talking about.
It is true. It is true.
It's definitely the best one, I think, especially if you're taking Gallants. And it's only 1 CP as well.
I mean, if it was GW's goal to make Thunder Gauntlets amazing, they've really overachieved on this instance, because Death Grip's mad. Do you want to read it out, Phil? Or shall I?
Sure. So you use this immediately after fighting with your knights. You've got to use either the Thunderstrike Gauntlet, the Paragon Gauntlet, or the Freedom's Hand. So it works on all of them. You resolve an additional attack with this weapon, so effectively you get an extra 3 hits. If you hit with that attack, you then the enemy model then suffers D3 mortal wounds instead of a normal damage, and is caught in the Death Grip. So you do D3 mortal wounds for start, and then you do the Death Grip, which is basically both players roll off and add your model's strength characteristics, which for the knight is 8. And then if you beat your opponents, the enemy model suffers D3 mortal wounds. If not, he escapes. But if he doesn't escape, then you basically roll off and you continue to do it until either he escapes or is dead, which is the big thing here, because you could do a lot of mortal wounds on 1 model.
Oh, it's crazy, man. It's the fact that it goes against strength as well. It's just madness. I suppose the only other thing to specifically highlight that I don't think you touched on is the unit that you target can only consist of 1 model. So you can't do it against hordes of stuff. You have to... It's basically specifically for characters, vehicles, stuff like that.
Yes, the bit I skipped over was, it's got to be within an inch and consist of a single model.
It's alright, isn't it?
It's pretty saucy.
There you go.
So next up is talking about the Warhammer World Doubles tournament that we're all going to be going to in just over a week's time. So there's 2 teams that we're going with. So Joe and Dan are going up together, and then myself and our good friend Richard is also going to be joining us, hot off the stateside bus, because he's flown over from San Francisco, not for this, but just for other reasons, and he's luckily been able to come and hang out with us.
Wouldn't that be crazy if he flew all the way from San Francisco just for this? That'd be mad.
I think he should get a trophy for dedication to the hobby, just for that, I think.
I reckon he'll probably, they always call that out, don't they, at these sort of events? Who travelled the furthest to be here? So, yeah, I guess him being from San Francisco. It's just whether or not they believe he's from San Francisco, because obviously he's got that very, very posh British accent, so I don't imagine they might believe.
Well, yeah. So he's actually from England originally, but he's just living in San Francisco at the moment for work. For all the listeners out there that don't know us personally, just to give it some more context.
There you go. Yeah, that's fair point, Phil. Thank you very much for that.
That's okay. And also, so the doubles tournament is almost the thing that we all do religiously. Not necessarily the tournament one because that's new, but Battle Brothers is by far, probably for everyone, our favourite events to go to at Warhammer World. We all enjoy it. It's the sort of funnest one out of the lot. This one's slightly different because it's a tournament, so I'm expecting a bit more stiff competition. Because actually we did all go to the tournament last year, not realising it was a tournament, and me and Joe had teamed up and decided to take a fun, kind of quite a casual army list to try and test some things out, and got absolutely slaughtered because the competition was quite competitive, actually.
I think our first opponent was a Baneblade and with Celestine and 20 of those
Electro Priests?
Electro Priests, which charged your 3 Lehman Russ's turn 1 and killed them all.
Yes, yeah. I don't think that was our first game. Our first game was the Warhammer World manager with his Chaos. I think that was the first game, but that one was definitely the second one, I think.
Oh god, yeah. The first game was really good because it meant that I actually got to use my Minotaurs, which is another army that I had.
Oh, we forgot about that one.
It slipped through the crack.
Yeah, my Minotaurs, and we got to have. We kind of forced a terrible set piece in the middle of the battlefield, forcing my Moloch.
Your chapter master, isn't it?
My chapter master to inevitably fight Khan on the top of a building.
And how did that play out?
That was quite good. So Moloch eventually won. Which was madness because Khan managed to do something like 7 wounds to him in the first round of combat, leaving him on 1. And then Moloch did nothing in return. And then they fought for 3 turns, not actually wounding each other. And then in the final turn, Moloch managed to take off all of Khan's 6 wounds in one go. And it was very exciting. But yeah, it was the highlight of the weekend, I'd say.
Well, the first game, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah,
it was pretty much.
See, that weekend, me and Mike had gone, and we had taken a combination of Crimson Fist Space Marines, which are terrible, and I didn't even have Primaris Marines. It was bloody tactical squads, and it's awful. And then Mike had taken he took a Sanguinor, Dante, some Sanguinary Guard, Astaroth, Lamartes, not Astaroth, and some Death Company, and something else, and some scouts or something. And it was like his army alone was 9 drops. It was utterly mental. It was like probably the worst army we could have conceivably built. And again, same deal. We were like, it'd be fun. Take all the Blood Angels characters. This will be a laugh. And just got utterly beasted. Of that weekend, we won 1 out of 5 games, and the one we won was against an Orc team at the end who seemingly worked for GW, as far as I could tell, and had been brought along purely to kind of lose games against the idiots that brought the worst armies possible. Because it was terrible, man. And this is the thing, obviously from the outset, I describe myself more as a kind of gamer, and I've got more of a kind of I can play the game well sort of mentality. So that was a rough weekend for me. I was literally oh my lord. But that was early 8th edition as well, wasn't it? So
yes. And I think you really struggled with the transition to 8th more than say, for example, myself, where I was suddenly playing an army and winning games for a change and Guard in their index iteration, going, oh, they're really good, aren't they? This is good.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of going back down to my usual, not winning as many games, going, okay, so Imperial Guard are back to sort of where they were before. Okay.
I just want to briefly just kind of talk through the criteria for this doubles, just because I think it's going to be really interesting for the overarching conversation. So it's 1,000 points per player. So each player has their force or their their force, as it were, and then those two collaborative forces come together to make your whole, your army. So collectively, you have 2,000 points. You can't credit any points from your army to your partners. So if I was partnering with I am partnering with Joe, I couldn't give him 20 points from my 1,000 points to make an even 2,000. We have to work within our own parameters. And then the only other thing is the rule of 3, which is a new stipulation to army list building, is extended now to being no more than 2. So you can have no more than 2 of any individual data sheet or what are they called, data sheets now? I'm going off topic. Data slate, yeah. Yeah, so you can only have 2 of the same thing, obviously with the exception of troops and transports. So you can have loads of wave serpents, which is super good fun. You can have loads of guardians, which is super good fun, but you can't have loads of fire prisms. That's the simple logic there and how it goes. And then the only additional stipulation is that though I could have, say, 2 fire prisms in my army, Joe could not then take 2 fire prisms in his army, because then we're capped as a whole at 3. So the maximum you can have of any one thing is 3, but the maximum you can have in your individual army is 2. So that's been interesting for me and Joe, because we've been we're going custodians. What did we agree we were saying it as before?
Custodes.
Custodes, the custards. Yeah. So Joe's got those, and then I've got Blood Angels and Imperial Knight, singular. So that's our army there. But originally, we were thinking, we'll just take 3 units of Custodes bikes. But we can't do that because Joe's one army can only have 2 units of bikes. So we've been working around that stipulation at this moment in time. And that's it, really. The only other weird little thing I think probably worth mentioning is they've gone for Maelstrom missions rather than Eternal missions, so that's going to be interesting. We've definitely seen in a lot of the Warhammer World events that there's been huge quantities of board control, VP-focused armies that concentrate on controlling every single objective, so Orc players with the jump creating big lines of Storm Boys that basically hold every single objective, Alpha Legion, Cultists. It's all this loads and loads of bases of Nurglings. These things are sort of doing the rounds and performing really well in the kind of format that we have here within the Warhammer World events, for sure. So it's interesting they've got Maelstrom, because theoretically that could be negative, but then equally it could be positive for those sorts of armies. But they're definitely more something I'm expecting to see a lot of. But yeah, the only other thing is that tactical objective wise, if Joe has a Custodes army and I have a Blood Angels army, neither of us can take advantage of our own individual tactical objectives. We have to use the generic rulebook tactical objective pool. So we have to use the generic cards. We can't have any Custodes specific objectives, or Blood Angel, or vice versa. Or Imperial Knight, for that matter.
Need to have both of you would have to have the same army, effectively, to be able to gain that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, weirdly, you are still allowed to take advantage of specific Maelstrom rules. So, for Dark Angels, you can use their Secret Agenda ability to not reveal what your cards are. So that still does come into effect. But it doesn't... But you can't have Dark Angel specific things, unless both of you are playing Dark Angels, in which case fair play, it's totally doable. So that's really interesting in terms of how that's all put together. I feel like this is the thing. One of the things I will say about the last doubles event we didn't have anything resembling this kind of structure, and the game was mental. The kind of armies that rocked up that were just crazy. This was at the time where people were arguing that you could take 6 Celestines in an army, so it was a very interesting time. So yeah, how do you reckon that's going to look, you guys? What do you think?
So I reckon with the release of the new Knight Codex, we're going to be looking at either one person's going to go all knights and one person's going to take a small army to generate some CPs, or we're even going to get like double knight lists where you're going to have like each player's going to have a big knight each and then like 2 armigers. That's what you're going to be able to fit in there.
The thing is for me on that, because I mean obviously we looked at that as well, and one of the things is that 2 unit restriction is really weird on knights, because obviously you could take 2 units of armatures, right? Like you could, but again they're like 174, 16. What are they? 1617? Well, not 17. Sorry.
There's 3 points between the 2, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 171 and 174, isn't it? So you got the shooty variant and then the. But anyway, long story short, it's like, you know, you can take. I mean, in a 1,000-point army, you can theoretically get 5 of those in. But then you have to take 1 unit of 3 and 1 unit of 2. So you could do it that way, or you could do 1 unit of 3 and a bigger knight. But then it's just that thing. It's like, I don't know if knights are that viable. The reason why we're not doing all knights is because I don't think they are. I think 1 knight's enough. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
The other end of the spectrum is you might end up coming up against horde lists, because they are the current meta, as it were. So orcs are doing very well because they can string out and hold lots of multiple objectives. Or we might see Eldar very good in small armies because of the amount of firepower like 2 Eldar forces could put out.
And they're not restricted in one of their best units, which is wave serpents, which is big, right? Like, I mean, you could have. Yeah. I mean, again, you wouldn't get more than 2 wave serpents in a 1,000-point army, realistically.
Yeah, but one person could take 2 10-man units of Dark Reapers and 2 Farseers, and then it's game over for a knight player against that.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, sorry, Phil.
The thing that's hamstringing the knights is basically the CPs, because they need to be really viable. They need to use a lot of stratagems, and therefore they need lots of CP. So ideally, you need to take them with a guard army or maybe an admech army to effectively farm those CPs. And it's like I've started getting some knights, so I've got the Valiant, which I'm building at the moment. And ideally, I'd love to take it to the event, because I think the Valiant with a battalion of Krieg that I could then give the Corvos Aquila relic. So whenever an opponent spends a stratagem on a 5-up, I get a CP. And then I could obviously give them Grand Strategist Warlord trait. So on a 5-up, when I spend a CP, I can refund 1 back. And the fun thing with that one is that Richard is probably going to take his Elysians or maybe his Roughnecks, which is a tank Imperial Guard list. He can have his Warlord, also have the Grand Strategist. So every time we spend a CP, we've got 2 5-up chances of getting that CP back, which I think is quite viable and a little bit cheesy. But in a tournament format, I think that's, that's fair game.
I'm just checking the wording on that, because I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, you can take the same Warlord trait.
Yeah, you can't take multiples of characters or relics, but you both take the same Warlord trait. So
have we both got an individual Warlord then?
Yes,
so,
we do.
Yeah,
sorry,
you can flavor Warlords twice in the.
Okay.
Yeah, so in fact, the way the games are pointed, slaying the Warlord is the first decider. So you've got your tournament points, and then it's slay the Warlord. And I think what was the next thing in the order of the scoring? So yeah, so it's total So first of all, it's total secondary objectives. So the total overall, and there. So obviously that all gets calculated in. Then if there's still a tiebreaker, then they go to slay the Warlords, and then they go to line breakers, then they go to first bloods, and then they go to total value of enemy slain. So in many respects, most of the deciders are going to be determined by your ability to accrue secondaries, because the likelihood of you actually still being in a tiebreaker situation by the time you've got to Warlords, slayed, first bloods, and so on, it's I think you're probably it's going to level out by that point. So I mean. Yeah,
It's just-
but killing
which is
warlords is important if you're aiming for the top.
But it's also mental because both of our warlords are aimed at getting stuck in, mainly in close combat.
Yeah, true, but then I don't think necessarily. But again, that's with a goal towards killing warlords, killing other things, right? I think at the end of the day, whether your warlords, whether you're whether you're giving that away or not, I don't think is that important in the grand scheme of things. I think, but I don't know.
Is it worth saying what our lists are at this point? So
Yeah, totally.
my 1,000 point list is two shield captains on Dawn Eagle jet bikes, and 3 custodian guard squads to make a battalion, and then I've got a vanguard assassin detachment of a Calidus and 2 Eversaws. So like I was saying.
We debated that a lot as well, right? I mean, that was a lot of back and forth of what we were thinking about with that list, because I think that's really strong for what that is.
Oh yeah, Custodes are one of those armies where if you can only take 2 of a certain type of unit, we originally talked about taking 2 shield captains on bikes and then 3 units of jet bikes, and then we were like, oh no, we're going to take 2.
No, so, it was one shield captain, 3 jet bikes, and then we had to give 2 of them like token missiles, just because of points to get it up to 1,000.
Yeah. And then we realised that we could take 2 of each unit, so that kind of scuppered us. And then we kind of looked at patrols to maximise on getting bikes. But it's just the problem with Custodes is because they're so expensive, and wanting to take advantage of getting command points. A battalion's the only real way around it. But your minimum squad size for troops is 3 men, and they're coming in at 150 points each. So your tax, as it were, for a battalion is 450 points of your army straight up then.
I think the thing is, though, as we've seen in our sort of playtesting with them as well, though, is Custodes on foot are pretty useless in 3-man units if they're isolated, but I think when they're grouped up, they're still pretty damn terrifying.
Oh god, yeah. So if you've got I've got the 3 units, that's 9 guys, so that's 27 wounds in 9 guys, all strength and toughness 5 with a 2-up save.
And a 4-up invuln.
Yeah, and a 4-up invuln. So getting those dislodged from any part of the table is going to be difficult.
No, they're solid, man. Really solid. And then on my side of that, just for the sake of talking through the army list as a collective, I'm actually still at this point dabbling because I love the idea of taking a librarian dreadnought. I love it. I keep looking at the damn thing, thinking, oh, I've got to put this in my goddamn army list. It's so cool. But then at the same time,
and its beautiful paint job helps as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You did a fantastic job painting that one, mate. It looks glorious, and that's the thing. I was like, oh, dang it, I really want this thing in there, but as it stands, the army list is what we lovingly call here Captain Smash, which is basically a Blood Angels captain that has been tainted with the Black Rage and thus fallen part of the Death Company. So it's a captain that uses the stratagem to become part of the Death Company. He is then armed with a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield and the Angel's Wing jump pack, which is a jump pack that is a relic that allows him to reroll charge ranges, but also ignore Overwatch. So you can't Overwatch him when he charges in, which when combined with Descent of Angels, along with the ability to do an additional D3 attacks, and the +1 attack you get for charging, and also the Warlord trait of Artisans of War or something of that nature. I've forgotten the exact name of it, but the one that makes his Thunderhammer damage 4 rather than damage 3.
Master Artisan.
Is that what it is? Cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, he's a freaking force of nature in the game, right? When he comes down, he hits hard. If he stuffs the charge, or if you stuff the charge against him, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's problematic, but I mean, you know, with Descent of Angels, you've got 3d6. With the Angel's Wing, you've got re-rolling. With the fact that no one can overwatch you, you can tell your opponent, I'm charging your entire army. It doesn't matter. You can just go in and do whatever you want. And then there's an additional stratagem for free CPs where you can then also attack again. So yeah, I mean the viability of old Captain Smash is still there. I appreciate now in the new rules rewrite, not rewrite, but addition or the big FAQ, he can't come down till turn 2 now, but still, you know, at the end of the day, he's still horrifying. And even then, I have a stratagem that if I wanted to, I could put him on the board, redeploy him, and then do all this shenanigans as well. So there's lots and lots of viability to him. He's a great option. Really, really fond of him. Keep him there. Then that's backed up by Lamartez. Lamartez is the Def Company chaplain, not Astroff, the dude with the axe, but the dude that looks more like a chaplain, carrying the old Crozius Arcanum, and also, you know, a rather awesome-looking, you know, cool Blood Angel-style mask and stuff. So he's a freaking awesome character. He's second only, really, to Captain Smash. I mean, again, his abilities are he's got a really an awesome mace that does D3 damage and boosts his strength and decent minus AP as well. He's just an all-round really, really great character. He allows Def Company units to reroll all misses, but he also allows them to reroll charges as well, which is a huge buff. So everything about Captain Smash and Lamartez as the kind of dynamic duo is solid. In addition to that, as a troops section, I've got 2 units of Intercessor Marines, standard 5-man units with bolt rifles and chainswords for the sergeants because they're free, so you may as well give them for the extra attack. Means your sergeants have got 4 attacks rather than 3, which is crazy useful when you're a Blood Angel and you're wounding on 1 more than you would normally, so extra attacks are all good. Sniper Scouts because they give us a certain level of additional tactical flexibility, because ultimately if we're up against opposition that want to try and control that middle ground, there is something that we can throw out there as a sacrificial unit, but also as well they're very good at killing characters, especially against Astra Militarum or Tau, so that's quite cool. Then in addition to that, there's 5 Def Company, 1 with a Thunder Hammer, 1 with a Power Sword, all with jump packs, so 5 Def Company, because obviously you can't take Lamartez without Def Company, and Captain Smash needs someone to chill out with as well, so that's all good there. And then lastly, it's a Knight Gallant with a Melter Gun, which is the close combat one, so he's got the Thunder Gauntlet. Obviously I'm going to use the new spangly 8 damage Thunder Gauntlet from the Imperial Knight book that we talked about earlier. That thing is absolutely incredible, and that knight is just incredible. So, yeah, and that is a cool 1,000 points bang on right there. So, yeah, that's my army list. How about you, Phil? What are you bringing?
Unlike you guys, mine isn't as well thought out. So mine's more of a vague idea rather than a definitive army list. Obviously, I talked about I've got this Knights Valiant that I would love to build and paint up. I'm like 80-90% of the way through building it, so that gives me about a week to paint it up, which I don't really think is enough time. So that's a possibility, and it will be just fun to play with it. And I think it would also go really well with a Krieg battalion as well, just for the board control. So it's unlikely I'll take it. If I'm not taking it, then it will likely be a Krieg battalion just as a core. Then it's a matter of deciding on whether I'm going to take some tanks. So a Punisher tank commander is always normally the good kind of go-to units. Obviously, Lehman Russ battle tanks are also good. Death Riders are also pretty good, depending on whether they get shot off the board turn 1 or not, or if you're going to outflank them and also fail your charges. So they can be a bit hit and miss. One other option is to take my Shadow Sword, which in some games is like my old faithful trusty tank, and normally does really well, but again it can just be shot off the table turn 1 if you're not too careful. Richard, on the other hand, he's possibly taking two different lists. One of them is his Elysians, so in which case he'd be taking some, I think, Tauros and Taurox.
I have his list in front of me. If
Did he send you one? Because he
sent it to the group ages ago. I can.
Okay.
Do you want me to post it in the conversation?
Yeah.
You can
Or
have
just
it as a reference. Here in 2 seconds, everybody, for the magic of this to come to pass. There you go. Bam. There it is.
Okay. I'll read through it. So Richard is possibly taking his Elysian army. If he's doing that, he's going to be taking a Elysian company commander. He's going to be, for the elites, taking a company command squad loaded out with 4 plasma guns, because why wouldn't you? He's taking another command squad, all with grenade launchers. Then he's taking 2 drop sentinels with the multi-melters, a platoon commander, and then he's also got an officer of the fleets, 2 Tauroses. One of them's the Venator, which I'm not too sure. I think that's the one with the grenade launcher, and then he's also taking. Oh wait, no, hold on. Oh no, it's just one Venator, which is the twin las cannon one. Actually, no, it's two Venators, so he's taking 2 of those. Because I think the benefit of that is it can still move and shoot without the -1 to hit. I think that's their bonus, and then I think they get a 5-up in run if they move over a certain speed as well. And then he's going to also take the Sky Talon, which I probably would suggest he not take because it's quite fun from a narrative point of view, but I don't think it's that good. But it can mean he can take one of his buggies and drop that down somewhere on the board turn 1 rather than deep striking it in. Then he's got 1 Valkyrie, I think, and 1 Vulture. Yeah, I think that's it. And obviously the Vulture's fantastic.
I suppose the thing is with that list,
I think his list probably.
Sorry, no, you go ahead, mate. You go ahead.
I was going to say, the list probably does need tweaking a little bit, and we need to try and synergize it with whatever I'm taking. I mean, ideally, I could do a lot of board control from turn 1 with my Krieg by just taking lots of troops, and then he can sort of drop down with all of his army and go out and get those objectives. It's the survivability of his stuff, and also have I got the firepower to shoot off the opponent's board control to make room for his units to drop down. So it's quite interesting the way the rules, the beta rules regarding deep strike work is you obviously need half of your army on the board and also more than half of your power level. But that's done on a combined team army level, not at individual army level. So in theory, I could have all of my army on the boards turn 1, and Richard could, in theory, as long as he's got a lower power level than me, have all of his army off the board. Now, I wouldn't say that's a good viable tactic because
I wouldn't either.
Survived turn 1 against 2,000 points, which I don't think would be very good. So that's one of his army lists. Did you have something to say about it, Dan? I think you had some critiques.
No. I mean, my critiques for it. I mean, it's something actually me and Joe have with our army list. I mean, the problem is when you're farming CPs, you're inevitably, you unless you've got a really efficient transport option, which Space Marines really don't. I mean, okay, normal Space Marines do to an extent with Rhinos or even maybe a Crusader if you want to go completely balmy, but then you've got a Crusader, which is a massive waste of points at the moment, in my opinion. But, this is the thing, like the Elder, because of the Wave Serpent, because it's got the 12-man capacity and they can take loads of little 3-man units, you can go, put them all in one thing. But the problem is with this army, as a problem with mine and Joe's, is it's the amount of drops. But you need those command points, right? So you gotta go for them. But
I
five
don't
command
know,
points creates 5 drops.
I think for a guard army, it's like you don't need that. I will always use the CP, like I'll always use them, but there's nothing good to spend them on. Like the best thing that the guard have to spend their CP on is either the crush them stratagem, and that's only if you've got super heavy, or it's like, I'm just going to re-roll this 1 dice using the bog standard big rulebook one. Like, I think also, the problem with the Elysians and the Krieg is they don't have their own specific regimental traits and stratagems.
Yeah.
And because of that, the actual Astra Militarum rulebook stratagems, half of them they're already locked out of because they're units that we either don't have access to at all or just wouldn't take because we don't have a synergy with those units. So unfortunately, I think if you kind of play a guard army, playing Krieg and Legion is the least competitive way that you could possibly play a guard army. So I think there's no point us doing a build specifically to farm CP because I don't think we have anything to spend it on. If we were to take some knights, then I would say yes, then it's worth doing.
Yeah, those knights are a thirsty army.
You Custodes are as well, right?
So the Custodes one, like, would inevitably you do the stratagem of like the victor of the blood games, which gives my warlord one reroll to hit, wound, or armor save a turn. It's 2 command points, but you're basically paying if the game goes 6 turns for an additional 6 command points of worth of just single rerolls. And then like other useful stratagems are Custodes have got 3 ways of interrupting your opponent's fight phase. They normally cost like 1, 2, or 3 depending on how you do it. But I think like as my army is built, I'm only going to need to use the 2, and then whether you decide to use knights or not, the rest can kind of be spent on your army.
Oh god, yeah, my army list is gonna need CPs like crazy. The Knight Gallant's gonna be using 1 a turn to boost its save, and then it's gonna, when it does get in combat, you're gonna want to use that flipping crush 'em thing, and that for sure is going to be utilized. And then Captain Smash is like he's a CP sponge. He literally is like, he comes down, right, okay, Descent of Angels, I think that's 2 CPs, and then it's plus D3, that's 1. Then it's fighting again, that's another 3. So he can use 6 in a turn without even thinking about it, and just like, and then before you know it, you're like, So yeah, I mean, Captain Smash will definitely
your knight take up a lot as well, because if you want him to take a relic, you have to make him a character. Yes. You have to spend 1 command point to make him a character.
Well, you can. Well, that was actually a question I was I need to dive into actually, and we'll maybe talk about it later. But because as I understand it, I can use the stratagem where the relic stratagem where I can give myself an additional 1 relic. And then I don't need my warlord to be from that detachment. I can just take 1 for that 1 CP.
But you have to be a character to receive a relic.
Oh really? Oh, what for Imperial Knights or just in general?
In general, only characters can take.
No, there's if you're talking about the warlord, if you're talking about the stratagem that gives a relic to a knight, it also makes them a character at the same time.
Okay,
there's
cool.
The second stratagem which makes a knight a character and a warlord. But you don't need to do that one to give it a relic. The relic one makes them a character as well.
Making them a character and a warlord isn't. If you could make your Knight Paladin the warlord, would be hilarious.
Well, it's worth it you give them the warlord trait to give them +1 to their invuln save, and for 1 CP, that's totally worth it. But why wouldn't you do that?
I suppose it becomes a case of which one we want to be a warlord more. Do we need that +1 damage, or do we need the survivability? Because the fact is that in either instance, that character's going to die. And I feel like, I don't know, anyway, we can work that out later. So I suppose in closing, in terms of this section of it, obviously we're super excited about it. Love a Warhammer weekend. It's super fun. Where do we think we're going to place? Joe, what do you reckon for us? How do you think we'd do?
Oh, I'd like to say top third.
Top third, you're saying?
Yeah.
I thought you were about to say like top 5 or top 10, going real ambitious.
I'd say the highest that I've placed the doubles was with Phil, and we did 2nd. So if we can match that. if we could match a second or even a first, that'd be glorious.
Well, the best I've ever done at a doubles was with dear old Richard, where we won it, which was super cool. I don't think we'll win because I don't think our army. I don't know. I think optimistically, I'm with you, man. Upper third is super cool with me. I think I'll be really happy with that. I think, you know, and again, I hope we come away with some good favourite game votes. I hope people enjoy the gaming. You know, that's all I really care about. I'm not, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, it'd be super cool to come close to the sort of upper echelons, but we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, second would be amazing, right? If you come away with a second place, that'd be crazy cool. But yeah, how do you think you and Richard will do, Phil?
It depends. So if we take our second alternative list, which is Richard's Roughnecks, which will involve let's see, Stormlord, which is his favourite super heavy. And then if I want to be super cheeky, I'll take my Shadow Sword. I think that list will potentially do a lot better than just a more generic guard army. But even so, I mean, Richard's only played a couple of games of 8th edition, so he's still got his training wheels on, so to speak. I'd imagine we'd be in the lower half. How far down, I don't want to say, but I mean, the last time we did the doubles, we got absolutely smashed and was almost at like the not quite bottom 10, but it may well have been. I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know. I think if we always place around the middle, I'm quite happy with that. I'm not expecting to be top 10 or top 20. I think, yeah, if I get around the middle mark or even just not bottom, I'm more than happy.
There you go. And obviously as well, you know, I mean, you know, previously you've done really well in best painted armies and all the rest of it, because obviously, but then obviously it's the two collectively. How'd you feel about that this time around?
Yeah, normally I definitely strive towards a couple of the painting awards, either like the best army or like best vehicle or something. And I mean, Richard's army is painted speedily and efficient, is the way I would put it. So we won't be
how diplomatic of you.
Up for any awards in that respect. But I mean, I think it'll be fun. I think even with his Allegiant army, I think that would be quite a novel game to play against for an opponent, so they might enjoy that game more. I don't necessarily think that would necessarily buy us favourite game votes or anything like that, but I mean, I think in terms of us going away and having a fun weekend, that would be fun. I think rocking the evil twins and taking 2 super heavies would be quite fun just for the novelty of it, because I've never done that before. Although I sort of, even though it's a tournament, I'd still feel quite bad about it. But then, considering I came across quite a few last time, maybe I shouldn't.
No, indeed. I think that's the thing, man. I think we're going to see so many Horde armies because they're just the flavour of the month. And, you know, I think, you know, we're going to be overrun with Nurglings and flipping, you know, the never-ending swarms of orcs and all this stuff. And, you know, that's why I really like Imperial Knights. I like the fact that Imperial Knights really put those guys to task, because the fact is that a lot of those armies now have a very readily available and actually very popular, hopefully very popular, counter in Imperial Knights. And I think that's going to be really interesting, because if a lot of people, if say there's 100 teams turn up to this event, if 30 of those teams feature Imperial Knights in a relatively frequent style, I think that's really going to change the landscape for some of those more, you know, established Horde players. And you know, but we'll see, because I mean, who knows, right? I mean, who can say?
I think one of the problems with the Knight Army is the FAQ. If it drops 2 weeks after the Codex comes out, it will come out the day of the tournament, in which case it's not valid. And what most Knight players are expecting is a tweak to the Knight Lance rule. So at the moment, you can't gain any CPs unless your Knight Lance is made up of at least 3 Questors or a Dominus class. So you can't use Armigers to basically bulk out your super heavy detachment and gain those CPs. So I think that might be a tricky thing if you're going to take an all-night list.
Oh, yeah.
Because you basically can't take armigers. You'd have to take 3 knights, which you can't. You might be able to do.
No, you can't. Gallants at their cheapest are so it was it 285 for the.
They're like 360 something.
Yeah, they're borderline 370, I think it was, because they're 285 standard, gauntlets 35, so that brings it up to 220, chainswords 30, so that brings it up to 350. Is it? No, hang on.
I will.
No, yeah, 350, but then it's got the auto gun, so 354. Regardless, though, you can't.
Even
have...
then,
Battlescribe put it at 354.
Yeah, 354. So, but even then, right, 354, you can't have 3 of those in 1,000 points, can you? So
no, you could take 2 and some armigers and have basically 0 CP, but your partner would then have to farm CP like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
for to make the knights particularly viable. I mean, the best build in my eyes is probably just 1 knight and a battalion plus your friend also either taking a knight and a battalion or just taking a farm of some kind.
Yeah, and me and Joe have sort of gone for something similar to that, although we really like the assassins because the Eversaws are really good at carving out holes in the back lines of people's armies, and the Caluxus, the Kaladas, is phenomenal at stuffing early game CP stuff, because when you have to roll off for stratagems and things, it's massively problematic early game.
If you come up against that, like for instance, like a chaos player with a unit of like las cannon havocs, they're going to want to use veterans of the Long War. So you're going to have to roll off, and on a 4+, they're going to have to spend more command points to get that, and then they're going to want to do endless cacophony at the end of the shooting phase, so those las cannons can shoot twice. You have to roll off of that, and that can potentially cost them 3 command points. So their first turn, they're going to stuff 5 on the potential of destroying 1 vehicle.
No, it's a big thing, man. I love that assassin. I thought she was amazing in 7th edition, 6th edition, and still doing real bloody well in this edition as well. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. I think we should probably wrap it up there because we've talked for an awful long time. So at this moment in time, me and Joe feel optimistic, upper third. Phil, lower half. We'll get together in a month's time and see how that all came together. I'm sure we're all very excited to hear. So yeah, that's that. That pretty much wraps up everything for us this week. I hope you've enjoyed this very first Look Out Sir podcast recorded, or rather Look Out Sir experience recorded. Getting it wrong, that will happen on the first time around. But yeah, looking forward to seeing how we get on in this upcoming doubles tournament. We'll definitely be back to talk to you guys about that in the not too distant future. Any more from you two gents before we say goodbye?
No, I'm all good. Had fun. It's been emotional.
It's always emotional with you, Joe. A non-stop roller coaster of emotions.
It's a bit weepy, but we'll get through.
It's good, man. It's good. I think you did a very good job. Well done, you.
Yeah.
Pat on the back.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Absolutely. One and done. That'll be it now. You'll never hear from us again. No, you will. We'll try really hard.
See you all in a month's time, I guess.
Is it a month or 2 weeks? What are we going for these days? There's fluctuating opinions on this stuff, but
I'd happily
depends on how busy we are.
1 in 2 weeks.
We'll see how we get on. We'll see how this
Talk
does.
About the doubles tournament.
Yeah, doubles tournament, Age of Sigmar, probably. What's the next 40k book coming out?
It's either Orcs or Space Wolves or Genestealer Cult.
Oh yeah, no, they teased some new models for Genestealer Cult, didn't they? The new Aberrants, or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
So there you go, probably Genestealer Cult. Well, who knows? We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks. But again, guys, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers, and good morning, afternoon, or evening. It's been lovely. Speak to you later.
Bye, have a good time.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.